Animal Farm, a fairy story by George Orwell, first published in 1945, is told in the form of a fable wherein the main characters are animals. Despite its dark warnings of doom and sudden bouts of gore, it is appropriate for preteen readers and a delight to read again as an adult. Orwell would later explain in Why I Write, quote, Animal Farm was the first book in which I tried with full consciousness of what I was doing to fuse political purpose and artistic purpose into one whole, unquote. Russell Bakers writes in the preface to the Signet Classic edition of the book from 1996, the book Animal Farm, quote, It is also a political tract, a satire on human folly, a loud hee-haw at all who yearn for utopia, an allegorical lesson, and a pretty good fable in the Aesop tradition. A little further in, since its first publication at the end of World War II, it has been read by millions, with 1984, published 3 years later, it has established Orwell as an important man of letters, unquote. It contains insight and wisdom, I'm saying this about Animal Farm now, it contains insight and wisdom, and it imparts important lessons. It was consciously intended to be a critique of Leninism and Stalinism specifically, not of socialism in general, although it ends up being that way because, every time they try it, what ends up happening? The same thing. Anyway, so there you go. As Christopher Hitchens wrote in Why Orwell Matters, 2002, quote, For Orwell, there was always the hope that socialists could be for freedom even if socialism itself had bureaucratic and authoritarian tendencies, unquote. Nevertheless, its warnings apply to every socialist revolution and every regime that has been established afterwards. In other words, it serves as a critique of socialism in the real world, regardless of Orwell's intentions. As Russell Baker wrote, quote, What's curious was Orwell's insistence that he had no intention of damaging the quote-unquote socialist cause. You would never have guessed this after reading the book, but he insisted that he intended only to write a cautionary tale for the democratic West, warning it against a dangerously alien form of quote-unquote socialism, unquote. So in other words, Stalinism, and Leninism too, but a lot of people say Leninism just stuck to the book of Marx, so. Today this is known as the real socialism has never been tried argument. To be fair, Orwell did not have time to see as many socialist revolutions as we have. There have been many socialist revolutions and states established after Orwell has passed on, but then again, others during his time were able to see that his story applied to socialism in general. So why couldn't Orwell himself see it in the very novel that he wrote? Russell Baker continues, quote, Devoted to British socialism, Orwell could not have found it very pleasant being denounced an enemy of what the Russians, and many of his countrymen too, called, quote-unquote, socialism, unquote. In Why Orwell Matters, again by Christopher Hitchens, he writes, quote, He helped keep alive the socialist press in England through many unpropitious years. Further on he writes, Yet on the political and cultural left, the very name of Orwell is enough to evoke a shiver of revulsion. Further in some semi-articulated way, the major figures of the left have thought of Orwell as an enemy and an important and frightening one. A little further in, he writes, Hitchens, It is true on the face of it that Orwell was one of the founding fathers of anti-communism, unquote. The lessons of Animal Farm apply to socialism in general because the book deals with the aspects of humanity that ensure that socialism in the real world will always bring about misery. So, while consciously intended as a critique of Leninism and Stalinism, but not of quote-unquote real socialism, it nevertheless satirizes socialism in the real world, in general, while providing insight into how socialist regimes succeed in gaining totalitarian control. They succeed in so doing, Orwell shows us, through the inclination of most people towards naivete, submission to authority, groupthink, self-delusion, as well as the inclinations of the minority of people who rule over them towards corruption, hypocrisy, and oppression. The story takes place on a rustic farm in England called Manor Farm. A horse named Boxer represents the best sort of loyal, hard-working, and patriotic person. Other animals such as chickens, cows, and ducks also represent working people. The most thoughtless group-minded of humans are represented by sheep. For the most part, politicians are represented by pigs. The figures of Trotsky, Lenin, and Stalin are mirrored by the pigs named Snowball, Squealer, and Napoleon, respectively. The cat is more of a selfish individual than most, though he fights alongside the others at one point. Dogs fulfill the role of the police. A raven named Moses represents religious professionals who preach that there is an afterlife wherein everything is wonderful. I think he calls it sugar candy mountain, I think he calls it. Everything is wonderful and easy. Benjamin the donkey seems to be the most educated of the animals and having the most long-lasting memory, it seems. He can read very well. He is very pessimistic, but he says very little. A mare named Molly represents vain, shallow, lazy, superficial, self-interested, and disloyal people. Humans represent the traditional ruling class. It begins one night when an aging pig named Old Major calls a meeting in the barn. He explains to the other animals of the farm that they are oppressed by humans and that animals could all live easily if they overthrew their human rulers, worked together, and shared equally in the fruits of their labor. There you see an illustration from an edition of Animal Farm by famous artist Ralph Steadman. So he did the illustrations for Hunter S. Thompson's Fear and Loathing. The drunken farmer sleeps all day, leaving the animals hungry and neglected by the farmhands who don't care because the farmer doesn't care. The hungry animals revolt, driving the farmer and his men and his wife off the farm. Let's have a little look. Here is Old Major again. He represents Karl Marx.
Old Major had been ailing, and now he had made known there were some things he wanted to say to his fellow animals before it might be too late.
That would be Boxer and the donkey.
It took a while for all to find their seats.
Benjamin.
The pigs had taken up the best positions immediately in front of the platform. Among them, Snowball, determined to get a good view. And Napoleon, equally determined and even less polite.
I have lived a long life. I have had much time for thought as I lay alone in my stall.
All right, so
I won't be with you much longer. And before...
He basically gives a speech that is basically Marxism at this point. And he says, you know, all their troubles are because of the ruling class, which is the farmer and his farmhands and the farmer's wife, I guess, and supported through the aristocracy of other farmers. Old Major gives his Marxism speech. Napoleon, Lenin and Stalin and Trotsky here, they basically listen and they're already imagining the power. And he's like, listen, sooner or later things are going to be intolerable. They're already getting to that point. And lo and behold, the farmer, as usual, he's drunk, but he gets a little bit more drunk than usual. Next day he wakes up, still asleep, keys around his waist. Now in the book he's got a wife, and I don't think they have a wife character in the cartoon here. So, you know, they're thirsty, they're hungry, they're like getting fed up. They burst into the store. Waking up Farmer Jones. They've had enough. And they've woken the farmer. But now, after being inspired by Marxism, they are not going to be oppressed by the Tsar anymore. And so they fight back.
Yeah, you might want to start running.
Now they have a unifying ideology. Now, in the book, his wife packs up and goes out the back door with her favorite clothes. And so he's off to explain what happened. And he will round up, he rounds up a counter-revolution, so, you know, the local farmers, and their farmhands. And they know, they're prepared for it, so they start getting ready for it. And so here comes the local humans. But I think there are 1 or 2 lives lost on the animal side, but they win and they drive the humans out. Now, I don't want to dwell too much on this for too long. We'll return to that. Now, Snowball, in the battle, the pig Snowball, he does not slow down even when injured by a shotgun blast. And I'm not sure if they show that. Well, let's see. Do they show that? Or is he just, did he get shot right here?
No, he got hit by the butt of a gun.
Yeah. Or I'm not sure if that is Snowball, but in the book, he, I think, well, anyway, Snowball gets a shotgun blast all down his back. And that would be Trotsky.
That's probably Snowball.
Yeah, this has got to be Snowball. He charged right at him in the book, too, so. And then there's Boxer. And the counter-revolution is foiled. So, there you go. And it's funny because Orwell is subtly, you know, he realizes that, you know, it's hard to read this and not be in some way sympathetic towards the animals. So they award Snowball with a medal. Okay? And there's a reason why we're mentioning this. Not just to synopsis story. But you saw, and it's in the book, that he did charge the guy and he got shot. And he got injured, but he made it through and he's okay. But he got an award for his bravery. Now, meanwhile, the Stalin character, what is his name? Napoleon. What was he doing? He stood back, right?
He hung out by the dude hiding in the straw.
Yeah.
And then he slammed the gate at the end.
Yeah. Now, don't be too literal, because in real life, Stalin, before he had any power, he was literally robbing stuff and blowing stuff up in the countryside, as like sort of an Antifa type figure.
Yeah,
and I think Trotsky was more of an academic like Lenin. I don't know if they engaged in sabotage, but Stalin certainly did. He did some nasty stuff.
Yeah.
But don't be too literal. What really matters here is their place in politics. What really happened to Trotsky and what really happened to Stalin. So anyway, so they overtake, and there's the very important fact that they then agree upon certain rules.
Inscribed in a prominent place, to be remembered and obeyed forever.
No animal shall sleep in a bed. No animal shall drink alcohol. 4 legs good, 2 legs bad.
Wings, Countess Legs.
animals are equal.
Alrighty. And those are called the 7 Commandments. And there they are written out.
Yeah. Real quick way to stop communism from taking you over like that.
Yes,
when you
Tabby?
say all people are fucking equal,
Yeah.
that means even the asshole standing on that podium over there.
Uh-huh.
And the day he walks out of his house, which he shouldn't have, by the way, is the day you set his pants on fire and chased him from the countryside. That's how you stop communism in its fucking tracks. By taking the hierarchy wanting to be asshole and burning his pants while he's still in them.
Right on. These 7 rules make up the principles of what they then call animalism instead of Marxism, or socialism, communism, their political philosophy. They also agree that no animal should live in a house where humans had lived. Snowball summarizes animalism as 4 legs good, 2 legs bad. And, of course, the sheep will blurt that over and over again.
Your logic is flawed. It's actually segregation of the mind and masses so that you always have an enemy. Communism 101.
Right.
Give the crowd an enemy, everyone. That way they don't see you stealing from them.
Right.
They don't see the work that they don't do. I mean, that they do, but you don't.
Right.
You know, that's the whole point. And that's
Yeah.
what I mean. When you see your supposed leader doing shit like that, if you don't want to be basically in a new form of slavery, maybe you get that guy right now.
Yeah.
Before he can amass any more people behind him, before he can kill a lot of you, before he can have his grand palace with fucking weaponry.
I think this was first published in 1945, so this is the end of defeating the Nazis in World War II. And at that time, Joseph Stalin was known as Uncle Joe because he was the ally, and they dropped bombs on Berlin and everything. And so people were not so keen to being this critical of Stalin or Lenin. But anyway, I go on. Most of the animals mean well, and they work selflessly towards a better life for all, but some of the pigs set about taking advantage. Not all the pigs are bad, by the way.
No,
It's easy to get that wrong, but I think all the sheep are followers. But some of the pigs are good, but they get killed. Some of the pigs set about taking advantage of their good intentions, the good intentions of all the animals, well, most of them, and they begin taking steps to gain power. Napoleon, the pig that represents...
Troublemakers.
Yeah, Napoleon, the pig that represents Stalin, raises a new litter of pups, keeping them separate from the rest of the animals. Being the recipient of all their loyalty, he trains the pups and to serve as his enforcers. They're basically his secret police, his Stasi.
Stepping army.
Yeah. His Republican Guard, as it were, or whatever. At his command, they drive Snowball off the farm. Snowball competition, right? The one that earned the medal.
Yeah, the one who's just as dumb as the rest, but not as crooked.
Yeah. So Trotsky, basically. So this is Stalin driving Trotsky out of the USSR, leaving Napoleon no rivals. His power grab accelerates, while Squealer, that's the last pig, is quite capable of convincing most of the animals of anything Napoleon wants them to. Though the other animals work harder and harder over time, they are rationed out less and less food. The pigs enjoy larger portions and better food. The pigs even consume alcohol. To get away with it all, pigs essentially rewrite history. They memory hole. So we normally think of memory hole as, and it does start in his story of 1984, but there is the concept of memory holing in Animal Farm when they rewrite rules.
Yeah,
And they rely upon the inability of most animals to really remember well, so that's how they get away with memory holing rather than a fire that they throw the documents down.
Here in America, the left tried to memory hole the Constitution.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's written in Old English
Right.
and
Yes.
cursive.
Right.
Now, what are the 2 things you think they took out of schools? They took out cursive writing.
Oh, I'm sorry,
and
that.
a
I got
lot
you.
of learning old script English from literature class.
Right.
You know, like, there's literally Romeo and Juliet that is dumb for people.
Mm-hmm.
It has none of the fucking Old English in it. It's just words.
Right.
And it has no passion. I've read it. It sucks. It's a fucking piece of shit.
Without
but
it-
it's what
yeah.
gets past used as literature in literature class nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
So your kid isn't even learning how to read the Constitution if they could fucking read it because they don't even know the cursive. You know why they do that? Because they have a translated one that's in regular text that they can change whenever the fuck they feel like.
Yeah.
And since none
That's
of these
memory holding
asshole
Shakespeare,
children can
then.
read the original document because they don't recognize the wording or the fucking script,
Yeah.
they don't know what it really says. It's all guesswork.
Yeah, that's horrible.
That's memory holding of the Constitution, and the left here in America fucking quite literally did that to the school system and all the young kids who will never be able to read that unless their parents are smart enough to teach them. So if you're out there listening and you've got goddamn kids, teach them both of those things. Go get you some fucking Shakespeare and start teaching. Get you a simple alphabetic cursive board and have them start learning. Because the school is not going to teach them. But mind you, the rich people's kids, they still get those classes.
Yeah.
They still get the good stuff. Your
Yeah.
kid will not, because your kid is their slave. That's the point. The slave should never know that it's actually free. And how do you keep a slave from knowing its own freedom? By making it stupid. Too stupid to read its own fucking pages. Declaring its freedom.
Yeah, you have to understand Elizabethan English to understand Shakespeare, and you have to understand, I'm not
Thank
sure
you.
exactly what kind of
Elizabethan.
English, right, and I'm not sure what the technical name of the period of English you would need for, the late 1700s, but that.
But either way, just learning Shakespeare, period, in literature class is supposed to cover that.
Yeah.
Because it teaches your brain to recognize those words and filter
Sure.
them and go, okay, this means that.
Yeah.
You know?
And
if
we're
they don't give you that, then how are you going to read that document? Because it's basically written like that.
just today, Stick Sex and Hammer 666 was mentioning how the word militia then is not necessarily, it's not the same as now. But back then, a militia were just regular people,
People
farmers
in the fields, their
who are
children.
capable of picking up a gun and of rallying together to the defense of their countryside if and when they need to, and that's what that meant. So
It's like this. If the British show up at your neighbor's barn,
yeah,
you're part of the militia if you get your gun and run over to your neighbor's barn.
yeah,
You're now in the militia.
right,
That is the militia. No one told you to come. You just decided that you were going to do it.
yeah, it's a
That makes you militia.
right.
There's no you have to take a course, which is what the left wants. They want only trained gun owners. Tell me where in that document it says only trained.
Right. Though the other animals work harder and harder, their life gets worse and worse. And to get away with it, the pigs essentially rewrite history. They memory hole. The commandments are altered. The fact that they're altered is denied. And then it's forgotten. The animals can't really remember well. Benjamin the donkey does, though. Snowball's role in the revolution is rewritten again and again throughout the book. So first, he's awarded that for his bravery, and as time goes on, it's ridiculous. He was actually running behind the scenes while Napoleon was fighting on the front lines. Snowball is back there being a saboteur, comrades, and if you don't remember it well, that is because you are one of the enemy.
Yeah, it's at that point that the ones being called the enemy should murder the one that just called them that. Well, you took out a farmer with guns. I think the horses literally could stomp those dogs into non-existence very quickly.
Yeah.
They're just not thinking.
Well, if you read the story, Boxer does fight back. He kills one of the dogs
Good.
very, very easily. He feels really bad about it, but Boxer basically works himself to death,
Yeah,
and he's
the
not.
noble character.
Yeah, and he doesn't last. And
the
you know,
nobility of the true working class.
right,
They just want to keep it moving for everybody else, and it's like,
right,
but you count too. They don't understand that.
right, and you can see in that Orwell's admiration and love for both horses and true working class people. I mean, the goddamn man wrote a book and spent time with coal workers crawling through mines, and wrote a book about what their life was like, and he
Spend
does.
time with these people instead of just observing them from his high towered roof.
Right, and he basically has this sort of, some people think Orwell is black pill, but no. Think about in 1984, the old woman who's singing and hanging laundry up and baking pies, and think about an Animal Farm boxer. In both cases, there's always going to be one of those. There's a young horse that's going to replace Boxer, etc. and it's not a black pill. Orwell's story. It's, there's, in both cases, that's the hope, and even makes it very clear in 1984. He talks about this singing old lady who's probably a grandmother, baking pies and hanging laundry as being the indomitable humanity that will never be completely dominated by Big Brother or the machine.
Even in the chaos.
Well, that, and there's just something natural and organic about her. And she's obviously, it's not just her, but there's always going to be, life is always going to go on.
Yeah.
And
That's
so
why communism likes to stamp out anybody with any unique life in them.
yeah, and
like that old lady, I'm surprised she didn't get killed in that story for singing and cooking pies.
yeah, well, I'm sorry. And I should explain to you, Tabby, and to the audience that this is when he sneaks out of the city. And so now he's out there with the proles. So it's the people who live out in the sticks, basically, comparatively, what we here in the States would call the sticks, where they're not so much under the power of Big Brother, because they go about
out there.
Yeah, they go about their lives, and they're distracted by, what is it, beer, sports, and sex. Fill them to the brim of, But in the cases of women like that, they're always thinking about, doing the work, because they got kids to take care of, and they got pies to bake and some food to make, and they got to, and there's a sort of hope-filled admiration of these type of people, male and female, one in one story and one in the other, because Boxer is a male, and it's the other it's a female horse that is vain in this particular story. But anyway, I just want to make the point that he's not black-pilled, if you really think about it. It's just that there are characters that kind of lose the game, but there's always that core, as Tabby called it, whatever you called it, the working class, or the nobility of the working class.
Yes, the working class is the true nobility on the planet. But whenever you have somebody who's been raised in privilege, and then they sit there and they go, I can think better than those people, and I see their problem, let me solve it. That person you don't fucking listen to. My
point at that point in the written version of this video is that there is the memory holing in this story that was published a couple of years before 1984. This just wasn't called the memory hole, but it serves the same purpose, and it is expressing the same concern that Orwell had for this rewriting of history to manipulate the public.
Memories last longer than this. What is wrong with you people?
It's in 1984, he explains it with their minds are filled to the brim with beer, sports, and sex.
Just garbage.
And then, say in Fahrenheit 451, Ray Bradbury has it so that people are the walls of their living quarters are always basically reality TV shows, what we would call today. So they're like kind of not real, not fake, not real, but kind of both at the same time. And, in Brave New World, it's Soma, which is a drug that keeps people sort of just too happy to really question things. In the film Metropolis, it's basically, I think it's just their life is that they have sports and gardens and rare birds to go ooh ah, and all that kind of stuff. But so distractions is basically.
Yeah, and usually what distractions mean is that the leader doesn't have the means to control you, really. They don't have enough manpower to keep you down.
Yeah.
So they manipulate you by changing history rapidly, making you think, basically gaslighting the public on a massive scale.
Yeah.
Keeps you so confused that you don't see the fact that the leader only has 3 guys with him, and you could easily fucking kill his ass, but you're concerned with the war that's supposedly happening all around you.
Yeah.
When really it's just those 3 guys throwing bombs out in a field to make boom boom noises.
Yeah. So in 1984, the main characters, their world is always under surveillance of Big Brother. And if they really do not get away with almost anything, even face crime, what we
microaggressions, as the left likes to call them. How dare you smile when I said that? I was thinking something funny, and you happened to talk at the same fucking time. Didn't mean I was smiling at you, jackass.
Right, but But Winston and another main character are able to sneak. That's the life of the outer party members. Okay, their life sucks, and so does the life of the proles. But the proles live a little bit further outside of London, and they're not under constant propaganda, under constant surveillance. But they are distracted by their minds are filled to the brim with beer, sex, and sports, and so they don't need to be
It's a description of the
controlled
general
like the
public.
city folk do. The members of the outer party always have to be reminded with stuff all the time, and they're more part of the machine, whereas the people out in the proles, which is short for proletariat, the real working class people, they just get on with their lives, and they don't need to. Yeah, they don't need to be reminded that they're under control, or they don't
They're
need to be
perfectly
controlled.
aware of
They're
it
just
when their grain gets seized so often.
yeah, but for the most part, they don't care. They just live their lives. They get drunk at the taverns. They go to work, and
Yeah, and that's what a smart ruler does. You leave the farmers alone.
Yeah.
Because you're going to cause a farmer revolt if you don't.
Yeah.
And if you don't cause a farmer revolt, then that means that you killed all your farmers, and you took all their shit and you gave it to inadequate assholes. Again, what the left tried to do here with farming,
Yes.
they just decided that they were going to try and appropriate farms and give them to black families that have never farmed in their lives.
What about Chinese companies?
That too.
The Gauntlet of Napoleon, again, this is representing Stalin, and the other pigs, Titan. The animals, some of the animals, protest the treatment. They're put on a mock trial and they're executed. And at other times after this, animals are there are purges, and animals are put on trial and executed, accused of false crimes, and amazingly, as in witch hunts and as in communist countries, they confess to things they've never done, knowing that they're going to be killed. Alright, so here, let's check out this scene here. These are chickens protesting their eggs being taken at excess. That's what they did. They taxed the chickens,
They
yes.
taxed the woman's uterus. It's the same thing as somebody having a baby for the government wants to tax the cash.
Yeah. Now here comes the secret police, the Republican Guard, the Stasi, whatever. The Gestapo. Now, look, they kill the cat in the movie. This does not happen in the book. The cat just runs away.
The innocent
Yeah,
suffered
they
with the
probably
guilty,
did it for dramatic.
and the chickens' uprising was short-lived.
Okay, but
Everybody likes a kitty.
yeah, so now the uprising, the chickens that revolted, they're put on trial here.
Comrades, I have made a terrible discovery. There are traitors among us.
Yeah, you asshole.
Yes, comrades. In league with Jones and Snowball. To destroy Animal Farm. Who else is guilty? Stand up and confess!
But there's memory holding.
Yep. Without
Right there.
cause.
And I guess you could say in this case, this happens progressively through the story. The rules are changed in favor of the ruling class. But This one, you could say, is sort of like an in-your-face, sort of what are you going to do about it thing. So it's almost like what they do with Epstein, for example. It's almost like Arkansas. It's more like,
Like, what are you gonna do? I have all the money.
yeah, I'm going to deny it to your face, but we both know. And it's written on the wall in blood, so to speak. Yeah, written in blood. So other animals are too afraid to speak up, even when they know that the killings are wrong, and even when they're afraid that it's going to happen to them, they're still just hoping it won't. Animals make public confessions of crimes that they didn't commit. They are put to death. The rule that no animal shall kill any other animal, as you saw, is amended with without just cause. And of course, what is just cause is defined by those who make the rules, right? Despite the original rules, the pigs live in the house. The farmers have the house. They sleep in the beds. They drink alcohol. I think eventually they even sleep with sheets in the beds. They have business dealings with humans outside, trading. They forge relationships with humans that are advantageous to them as the pigs, as the ruling class, but not so much for the other animals of the farm, of Animal Farm. Life for the other animals is as it was before the revolution, hard. The years pass, the spirit of revolution and animalism fades away. The pigs begin to walk upright, living their lives of like aristocrats in pomp and luxury. It becomes difficult to tell them apart from humans.
Into the day when pigs own and operate farms everywhere.
In the book, that's it. The animals don't have. They don't just put their foot down right then and there. Now in this version, they do. They put their foot down, and you know what? Here, let's give the Hollywood version. The Hollywood ending. Let's just watch this.
Become a happy place to live in was worse than ever for ordinary creatures. And another moment had come when they must do something about it.
In the classic animated version of the story, what we've been watching, the other animals overthrow the porcine dictatorship. I just wanted to say porcine dictatorship, but that's funny. Okay. So, yeah. So anyway.
I just think it's so funny. Then on a farm full of animals, they choose the pigs to trust. The pigs, who have the least work to do of any animal. They're not kept for their fleece.
Right.
They're only kept for their fat. Meat.
Well, though it was first published in 1945 when Stalin was supposed to be the good guy because the Soviets were among our allies in the fight against the Nazis, the pig, modeled after Stalin, is the biggest villain of the story, of course. And as Russell Baker wrote of Orwell, quote, he thought too many decent people in the Western democracies had succumbed to a dangerously romantic view of the Russian Revolution that
true.
blinded them to the Soviet reality, unquote.
Which is true. That's how communism works.
Yeah.
It's propaganda. You only get one version of it. You don't get the version where the farmer is eating his children.
Right.
You don't get the version where the farmer had to watch his children's heads be smashed in by the dictator's basic stormtroopers.
Right.
Walking around smashing things because you withheld a pound of grain. We know you did.
Yeah.
Not that they weigh the grain. They're just assuming you did.
Yeah,
because they
yeah.
know you want to feed your kids. So they take your kids out of the equation by either killing them in front of you or removing them and putting them in a concentration camp where they will be retaught how to live in society.
Yeah. Or maybe because the secret police have the guys enforcing these things on the quote unquote kulaks, maybe they have a certain quota of how many kulaks they have to turn in, you know, so.
A lot of times they do. It's like cops around Christmas.
Right.
A lot of tickets get written for stupid infractions in cities.
Oh, yeah.
It's not every cop that does that, but it's noticeable.
Now, these are my words. Though one incarnation of National Socialism, Nazi Germany, was the enemy, another form of National Socialism, the USSR, was an ally at that time, yet it would soon become the enemy in the Cold War. But Orwell was among those who knew that Stalin was not much better than Hitler, if at all. Orwell had come to understand these things from the perspective of an English socialist who had some inside knowledge of and personal experience with Stalin's Soviet government. Orwell had traveled to Spain to volunteer as a soldier on the socialist side of the Spanish Civil War. Baker writes that, quote, out of that experience came Animal Farm, an attack on the myth of the nobility of Soviet communism. Animal Farm became one of the century's most devastating literary acts of political destruction.
Me truth?
Yeah. A little further, truth trolling, basically. So further on, Baker writes, Orwell, of course, was seldom happier than when he was attacking fraud and hypocrisy and hearing the squeals of the injured, unquote. And goddamn it, Tabby, you get to hear me when I talk about, you know, when people get mad and send me emails and tell me, like, how dare you and all that because of what we do. And yeah, we delight in it.
It's like, thank you. That's
Yes.
a Christmas card. Thank you for
Thank
my
you
card.
very much for letting us feel that you are hurt.
Oh, it's like, oh, I brought you a piece of shit, some stress today when you walk around stressing everybody in your environment 48 hours at a time just because.
Yeah.
Oh, yay! I fucked you up? Yes!
Yeah.
I'm happy about that.
Right. And that's part of truth trolling. It's sort of like an adaptation of the whole thing in Conan the Barbarian, the film. It's what is good in life, Conan? It's crush your enemies, see them driven before you, and hear the lamentation of the liberals. Hear the squeals of the Democrats. Crush their newspaper articles and reveal them to be fake. Feel the squeal of the lawyers they send that threaten to sue you for what? Telling the truth. Truth is your sword, young man. It shall always prevail. Virtus! Say that again from Baker. Orwell, of course, was seldom happier than when he was attacking fraud and hypocrisy and hearing the squeals of the injured. Unquote. As well as personal experience, Orwell gained insight via paying close attention to reports of what was happening in the USSR that were being smuggled out to the West, but were getting far too little attention. In the preface to his book, Baker quotes Orwell as writing, quote, "It was of the utmost importance to me that people in Western Europe should see the Soviet regime for what it really was," unquote. So, unquote, unquote, I should say. So, despite what the author intended, it is a fact that his criticisms of Soviet socialism apply to socialism in general. Moreover, his critique of human stupidity in the face of political power grabs remains as relevant today as ever. We still see people blindly following leaders and herds. We see people falling for the revision of history. We see people engaging in blatant hypocrisy. The following is from Memory Hole, Definition and Real World Examples by Justin Trouble. Who's that? I don't know. Some guy. February 24th, 2023. Memory Holing in Orwell's 1984 and Animal Farm. In George Orwell's novel 1984, written in 1948, published in 1949, a memory hole is where such things as books, works of art, newspaper articles, and documents and photographs and other records on archive are said to be destroyed in a fire, along with the paper trail that would show that they were destroyed or altered. With this fiction, Orwell was warning readers about these practices being carried out in fact. In his 1984, as in the USSR, Communist China, and so on, media, such as books, films, records, documents, photos, and so on, and people, were altered or eliminated, and records of their existence were erased. And you know the famous examples. We went into more detail in that in a previous stream. In Orwell's earlier story, in Animal Farm, animals of a farm carry out that revolution, and then they have those rules, and as you see, those rules were memory holed. And here is a visual, and then you can see the alterations in red, and that's as per the story. Because they are animals, they're not sure if a rule had been different. Soon enough, any memory of any changes ceased to exist, and that's how the memory hole works in Animal Farm, as opposed to the fire in 1984. Today, wow, I gotta spell check that one. Today, they do not say all animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others. But they claim, on the one hand, that all women should be believed when they accuse men of sexual misconduct, then claim, on the other hand, that men can be women. They claim to be anti-racist while being racist. So that's the whole, 2 plus 2 can equal 5 if we say so. And that's the whole, all animals are equal, but some are more equal than others. It's just nonsense. This is postmodernist nonsense in service of critical theory and, ultimately power aims. Religion is bad, but Islam is good. Sexism is bad, but Islam is still somehow good. Abortion is okay, but somehow Islam is okay too. Criticizing homosexuality is bad, but somehow Islam is good. And I don't mean for all these examples of hypocrisy to come back to that, but a lot of them are Islam-based. A lot of the regressive left hypocrisies do come down to that. Not all of them, of course. There's no end to their self-contradiction. All white people are racist, and it is racist to see differences in people of different colors. Men are sexist against women, but gender is a social construct. As Christopher Hitchens wrote in Why Orwell Matters, quote, there isn't much room for doubt about the real source of anti-Orwell resentment. In the view of many on the official left, he committed the ultimate sin of, quote-unquote, giving ammunition to the enemy, unquote. And it's true. Even though he was socialist, I don't know if he died one, but even if he thought of himself as being a English socialist, as he did write, he did give a lot of ammunition to people just saying, well, this is how it happens. This is what happens. So, yeah. Animal Farm is a classic dystopian story. I recommend that young people read this novel along with 1984, Brave New World, by Aldous Huxley, and Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury, if not others. And then you can see, this is from my Culture War Encyclopedia, and then I recommend and I give links to, well, these are written sources that I have, so sorry I don't link to anything, but I'll try to put links to e-book versions of that. And then here's a link to my memory hole. That's another part of the Culture War Encyclopedia, which I'm going to show you right here, folks. It's under construction, but there is a lot there already. So if you go to 1984, for example. Alright. And ableism I have. Anti-Defamation League. Art AI. American Identity Movement, Animal Farm, which we were just looking at. Beginning to put stuff, Antifa, ADL, Anti-Free Speech, Arkansas. We did that on an earlier stream, and you get the idea. So